our second race today for the Spectrum Medical Toyo Tyres Sevens Race Series. Round 13 of the championship coming up. This grid is based upon the top 10 in each category being reversed from their finishing positions earlier on today, and you can see that the weather conditions have closed in, to say the least. This race is actually taking place later than is timetabled, but we've had to change the timetable because the weather really came in, and one of the supporting races to the Spectrum Medical Services Toyo Tyres 7 Race Series, at the moment it's just too dangerous for them to be out there single-seaters, so instead we've brought the Caterham race, you could argue, forward, but we've had delays in the timetable. So should be able to guide you through the grid then and the way that they line up for this one. It is Matt Drew that starts on pole position, and alongside is Gary Tootle. Tom Heyman-Joyce and Harry Senior are there on row number 2, and Ross Olivant and Mark Stansfield will be there on row number 3. I suspect they'll have 2 formation laps for this one, but the clock might start to tick in fact the clock has already started to tick by the look of things, so we're already racing in reality behind the safety car. Row 4 of the grid is Andy Perry and Jonathan Mitchell, and row 5 is Justin Armstrong and the winner from earlier on, which is Anthony Barnes, who scooped up his 3rd win of the 2023 championship season. Then it's Mark Farmer, former British GT racer, on row number 6 alongside Philip Nagel, with Duncan Greenaway and Jose Margalhais sitting there on row number 7. Lewis Tootle and Marco Egan ahead of Declan Dolan and Ian Cowley, and Julian Vickers and Tom Overton complete the first 10 rows of the grid. Then it's Ian Noble and Matt Welsh, Mark Drain, Paul Begley, Jamie Winrow, Gary Smith, Steve Riley and Cameron Cooper, and that is row 14 then, which brings us to the end of the 420R cars. Then, about 20 seconds later after they get going, into the spray will go all of the cars that run in the 310R class, which is the 1600cc category, and again the top 10 get flipped from their finishing positions earlier. So on pole position on the 17th row of the grid, but the first of the 310R cars, is Charles Elliott alongside Rob Good. Then it's Rob Warner and Paul Setai on row number 2, with Jonathan Ems and Caroline Everett on row 3. David Yates and Ben Winrow are there on row 4. Stephen Clark and David Baldwin, who scooped up his 4th win of the season earlier on with the top 10 reverse heat, starts 10th on the 21st row of the grid. Simon Sharrock and Sam May, Will Rayson and Scott Parker, Jake Poole and Greg Hyatt, Barry White and Rob Cooper, and Don Henschel might be one to watch out for at the tail end of the field, because Don is one of the quicker drivers in the 1600cc category, regular top 6 finisher, occasional podium finisher. But his very light blue car, the number 62 car, retired earlier on, so he has got work to do to try and carve his way up through the order, has Don Henschel. What is he, 5th in the championship standings coming into this one, with, let's say, a 3rd and a couple of 4ths in the championship so far this year. So with the clock ticking, the lights are still on the safety car, so it's going to do a couple of laps with the cars behind them, and then hopefully we will get the safety car in at the end of this particular lap. You can see even at these slow speeds there's still a fair amount of spray being deposited up into the air, but not quite as much as we would have if it were slicks and wings or wets and wings single-seater cars. So that's the decision taken by the officials to get the Caterhams out there, and the Sevens Race Series slightly ahead of what was originally planned in the timetable, and then see whether the weather conditions allow single-seaters to go racing here on Silverstone. Slightly heavier cars, these Caterhams, and with the tyres that they run, it still allows the water to disperse to a good degree. The difficult thing will be, you've got to stay off the white lines, you're going to have to stay off the curbs. If you touch any of those, you could be very quickly on the grass, and whilst there's good runoff areas here at Silverstone, the grass is very wet, and it's going to take a long time for that car to stop. So hopefully everybody will be staying clean. We did have a couple of cars withdraw after problems earlier on today, so there's a couple of cars that have withdrawn. It's still a very, very full grid. What did we have? Something like 48 cars having qualified over the course of yesterday with this combined grid for this weekend. Sometimes see them race on separate grids, the 310Rs, or the 1600s as they're also known, and the 420Rs. Last time out they were at Mondello Park in Ireland for 3 races. They returned to the UK with 2 races here at Silverstone. Then there's 2 races up at Alton Park on the 12th of August. That'll be round 14 and round 15 of the championship. And then the final 2, rounds 16 and 17, take place where we started the season, really, back at Donington Park, but we started on the national circuit. We'll conclude the season on the Grand Prix circuit at Donington Park, and that will be over the weekend of the 16th and the 17th of September. 50 points for a race win, 47 for second, 45 and so on. It diminishes by 1 point thereafter. There's an additional 1 point for fastest lap. And not for this race, but for the first race, if you qualify on pole position, then there's an extra 3 points for pole, 2 for second and 1 for third. So there's a lot of points up for grabs over the course of a race weekend in general. So Matt Drew in almost the spearmint coloured car. The number 72 car is at the front of the queue. It's red and black really for the number 64 car of Gary Tootle that will line up alongside him on that front row of the grid. Light green and black for Tom Heyman-Joyce alongside the black car with sort of the greeny, day-glow orangey, sorry, the black and day-glow orangey, day-glow greeny Harry Senior car on the outside of that second row, and it's blue and green for Ross Ollivant alongside the dark green and lighter green car of Mark Stansfield. They're the first 6 cars overall in this race. For the 310Rs or the 1600s, it's sort of blue and black for Charles Elliott, who's the pole sitter there, the number 44 car. He's got the grey and blue car of Rob Good alongside, and then it's light blue and orange for Rob Warner, who lost his nose cone in the race earlier on today, alongside the very easy to spot day-glow green car. There it is, just heading through shot now. You can't miss that one. That's 42, which is Paul Setai. So are we going to see the safety car in at the end of this lap? The drivers have now had the opportunity to experience the Silverstone circuit. The lights are still on the safety car, which means it's going to do a further lap. So this is all counting towards the number of laps concluded and completed. But at the moment, we've not got any racing in. And for what is scheduled to be a 25-minute race, we've now only got 18 minutes to go. And it's going to take probably another 3 minutes to do another safety car lap. So even if the safety car comes in at the end of this lap, what, we're going to get 15 minutes of racing in, which still isn't bad. You know, at least it allows the drivers to get some racing in, because even after this race here, there's still a chunk of other races that need to take place at Silverstone, and I think it might be a later finish than was planned, and potentially, if the weather closes in again, we might not get through the full programme. So at least for the Toyo Tyres 7 race series, supported for this weekend by Spectrum Medical, then they will get their 2 races in, albeit not quite as much racing as they would like in this one because of this safety car delay. So the BMW electric safety car splashes its way through Maggots and Beckett's. The race 1 winner from earlier on today is the black car with the Dayglow orange rollover hoop that you could briefly see in the background. Now that we've gone down the straight, you can see not a great deal. I mean, this is looking from our camera at what's going on, not at racing speed. Imagine the lack of visibility you've got if you're one of these drivers. No windscreens on these cars, so that spray and that rain and that water is hitting your visor in what are very grey conditions, with grey tarmac and grey sky and grey spray being thrown into your face. There's very little that you can see. All of the cars will have their high intensity rear lights on, but you can also try and understand, A, you haven't got much visibility, B, you need to try and work out, when you haven't got that visibility, where the standing water is. And you can see there was a line running across the track where the water's moving from one side to the other, and that little bit of standing water in these cars, key to understand where it is, because the likes of the 420Rs, minimum weight limit for those cars, including driver with all of his racing equipment, so that's helmet, suit, gloves, overalls, etc. For the 420Rs, it's 365 kilograms, so it's a light car. It's even lighter for the smaller engine capacities cars, so the likes of the 1600cc cars, the 310s, depending on the specification and the year that the car was built, 605, 615 kilograms, that's all. So light little cars, and if you hit that standing water on what is still a very, very good Toyo tyre, if the standing water is too deep, you're going to suffer some aquaplaning. Now, I think the movement of this colossal grid of cars around the track is probably going to prevent a chunk of that, because those little pockets of water that trickle from one side of the circuit to the other aren't that many at Silverstone, because it is quite a flat circuit, unlike the likes of, say, Donington Park and Brands Hatch that we visit, which have far more gradient. But you can't afford to lose concentration for a split second in this one. So the lights are off on the safety car, which means we're going to get things underway. I said we'd be in for about 15 minutes of racing, and I think by the time the car of Matt Drew gets towards the start-finish line, we're going to be literally bang on that one. Now, there's no overtaking until they get to the control line. Matt Drew can decide as to when he wants to hit the accelerator. They're not exactly bunched nose to tail, but we are going to get round 13 of the Spectrum Medical Toyo Tyres 7 race series underway here at Silverstone. And as the lights go out on the gantry and the green flag waves, We get the race fully underway with the mint and black car, the spearmint coloured car of Matt Drew, leading the charge up towards Copse Corner. Quite a strung out start in reality, because I think most of the drivers are still just conscious that you don't want to get too close to the car ahead, because you simply won't see, and you can see there is nothing other than gloom, and then all of a sudden the car appears through the mist up towards Copse Corner. And if that's what our camera is spotting, then that's exactly what the drivers will be needing to weave their way through and pass. We've had a change though, and to the front of the order has gone Gary Tootle. So Gary Tootle leads the way. Now that is Tom Heyman-Joyce that's in second place. Harry Senior is in third, and Matt Drew, the pole sitter, is already down to fourth in the spearmint coloured car. So Gary Tootle leading the way, the number 64 car. He's the only one at the moment that can see clearly. Harry Senior jinks out from the splay to try and draw himself alongside. Tom Heyman-Joyce is looking to see whether he can just get a bit better visibility as they head up towards Stowe Corner. But Harry Senior goes all the way around the outside and, for the moment, picks up the lead of the race. So right away around the outside goes the number 28 car of Harry Senior. And now, all of a sudden, from having no visibility when he was in the spray, he has the best visibility as he heads in towards the braking area for Club. A little bit of bodywork just being flicked up by somebody there in the background of the braking area. But Harry Senior leads, Gary Tootle, Tom Heyman-Joyce, then the pole sitter Matt Drew, who is down to fourth position. I'll pick out who's in fifth at the moment, and that's going to be Mark Stansfield that's there in fifth place in the background. I think it might well have been Gary Tootle's car that had a little bit of damage to it. Yeah, that was probably that little bit of bodywork that we saw flick up. So he's down into second place with Harry Senior leading. You can see the left rear wheel arch is flapping around at the moment as all of the drivers take differing lines. There's a big spin right through the middle of Farm Curve for Matt Drew, who I think thankfully, I thought he was going to remain stationary in the middle of the circuit there, but I think thankfully he disappeared off the track in the end. Will be able to rejoin with no damage, but pleased that he eventually had the spin and didn't leave the car in the middle of the circuit, because that would have been very, very marginal for people with a lack of visibility coming up against the car that was stricken in the middle of the circuit. But that was not the case. So he does finally get rejoined, but that will have dropped the pole sitter down through the order. Remember, top 10 reversed from what we saw earlier on today, and two separate races for the price of one. The 1600s, which is the 310R class, and then the larger engine capacities 420Rs. There is David Yates in the number 15 car. He is trying to carve his way through the order and is looking to try and gain position. David Yates was one of those qualified on pole for the race earlier on today, but when the checkered flag fell, David Yates was sitting fourth in the end in the 1600cc category. Has had one win so far this season in the number 15 car, so he'll be hoping that he might be able to steal the march and gain a few more places and get towards the sharp end of the order on this reverse grid. Ben Winrow heading and splashing his way through Brooklands Corner. Charles Elliott, who was the pole sitter in the 1600cc category, is now behind him, so I think that will probably put Ben Winrow potentially up into the lead of the 1600cc category this time through. Harry Senior leading the race overall by almost 2 seconds now from Tom Heyman-Joyce in second place. And for the 1600cc category, it is the number 58 car, which is the light blue and orange car of Rob Warner, that leads the way actually. David Yates second in the category in the 15 car, and Ben Winrow third at the moment, but that's the way they were over the start-finish line. I very much suspect that won't be the same order by the time they get over the start-finish line next time through. A, because of the reverse grid, and B, because in Caterham's, the car that's behind you is always going to go quicker because of the hole in the air that you punch. Not quite so much in these tricky conditions, because, of course, visibility is more than marginal. 11 minutes still to go. They thread their way for the fifth time in towards the braking area at Club Corner, and try to go all the way around the outside is Justin Armstrong of Gary Tootle. He's not quite going to make it stick as they head round through Club Corner. So it is the man who qualified on pole for the race earlier on today who is trying to draw himself alongside. Is he going to do it by the time they get up towards the braking area for Abbey? No, he thinks better of it in these tricky conditions, so he slops himself back behind the number 64 car of Gary Tootle. And I think this is going to be for fourth and fifth position. That's Paul Setai that's had the off. So that should be the number 42 car, I think, that will be tumbling down through the order. Couldn't quite see the number, but the colour was as good as Paul Setai's car. And Justin Armstrong finally picks off Gary Tootle. So place gained for the number 23. place loss for the 64. So safely out of the loop, accelerating the car round through the left-hander at Aintree. On the curbs in a 420R in the wet conditions, not ideal. It was Paul Setai that was off, so I did correctly identify the car. Brilliant work again done by the Silverstone marshals to get that car out of harm's way, and that was at Copse Corner. That was the first corner. Plenty of run-off tarmac, but in these conditions, it's not just the run-off tarmac that was utilised by Paul Setai. He ended up popping the car into the gravel as well. Safety car, however, is coming out, I believe. Yet, so the BMW safety car heading back out onto circuit with 9 minutes of the race to go. Now, was the safety car called because of Paul Setai's car being in the gravel, which subsequently does occasionally happen? The safety car comes out just as the car that brings about that safety car is cleared. Or is somebody else off somewhere in a dangerous position? Well, there's nobody else that's tumbling down through the order at the moment. I can tell you that there's a couple of cars that have entered the pit lane. Now, whether that be problems or whether it be drivers just not happy racing in these conditions, one of which is Andy Perry, the number 11 car. Now, for Andy, that is a former champion. He was a champion in the 1600cc class back in 2020, but he has headed in towards the pit lane. And the other one is the man who commutes from Portugal to race with us in the Spectrum Medical Toyota 7 Race Series here in the UK, and that is Jose Magalhaes. Race 1 winner splashes his way through shot there, which was the almost burgundy and day-glow orange car of Anthony Barnes. 3 wins for him so far this season. 3 wins also for the number 71 car, which is the light blue car you can see that sits there in 6th position at the moment, which is Jonathan Mitchell. Behind him is Anthony Barnes. So those are the 2 most successful drivers this season in the Toyo Tyres 7 Race Series. The other car that we probably need to keep an eye on is Gary Smith, because the reigning 1600cc champion is just coming up towards the shot now, the grey car with the yellow rollover hoop. He, unfortunately, was also a retiree in the race earlier on today, so rather than starting at the sharp end of the order, as he did in race 1, he started on the outside of the front row of the grid. The number 20 car started in 26th position on the grid for this one because of that non-finish. And where has he worked his way up to is the big question. He has worked his way up to 12th position now. Gary Smith gaining 3 more places on that previous lap. How many more he can gain, though, is a bit of a moot point, because whilst we're behind safety car, of course, there's no overtaking, and we've now only got just over 7 minutes of the race still to go. The rain had stopped here at Silverstone, but it's now belting back down again, I'm afraid. So I think probably the reason for the safety car was because the conditions had deteriorated again. And as ever, making sure that all of our drivers are safe is paramount. And if it's not safe and conducive to go racing in those weather conditions, you've only got 2 choices as an official. You've either got to deploy the safety car and leave it out there in the hope that the conditions improve over the course of the next few minutes, or you have to put the red flag out and stop racing. Now, that is what we had in the race preceding this, that just didn't happen. Single-seater race that was scheduled to get underway. It was going to be a safety car start for it, but the conditions were deemed, as they were trundling round on a couple of safety car laps, just to be too bad to go racing. So the race was red flagged before it really even got underway. Waited for a few moments for that weather and cloudburst to pass, changed the format so that we get the Toyota 7 Race Series out before the single-seaters. And yes, we've got some racing in, but it looks as though that weather, having closed in again, has again brought about this safety car. So let's just run you through the order. Harry Senior, number 28, leading the way from 47, which is Tom Heyman-Joyce. And third is going to be Justin Armstrong. And we're about to get the race back underway once more. So the black car with the Dagle orange rollover hoop in the hands of Harry Senior gets the race back underway. Do think that safety car probably was because of Paul Setai's car being stranded in the gravel, and just as they scramble the safety car out onto track, the car is dealt with by the marshals. But once the safety car's out there, you've got to do a lap with it. So a brief safety car period, 5 3/4 minutes to go. Harry Senior splashes his way, but with clear visibility through Copse Corner. There goes Ian Cowley at the wheel of the number 34 car. He is a little bit further down through the order, just outside of the top 10, in something like 13th position at the moment. Had an interesting first race of the day, where I think conversations happened in race control subsequently for some of the things that he was involved with. But you can see Tom Heyman-Joyce in second place, the light green car sliding its way on the power, coming through the Beckett's complex and then up towards Chapel Curve. Harry Senior, good restart from him, just moving the car around to prevent the cars behind from picking up his toe. The light green car is going to be Tom Heyman-Joyce in second place. Then it's the gold and red car in the hands of Justin Armstrong that's there in third place at this stage. Gary Tootle was fourth at the start of this lap, ahead of Mark Stansfield, who was up to fifth, and down to sixth went Jonathan Mitchell. But in reality, we shouldn't get any overtaking because they were under safety cars. So Mark Stansfield up to fifth ahead of Jonathan Mitchell, who's down to sixth. That might be looked into. And also David Yates moved up to 22nd on that lap, and the car of Julian Viggers dropped down to 23rd, and there were a few others further down that also shuffled the order. So in theory, no overtaking until the start-finish line, so everybody should be in the positions that they were. So the front pack splashed their way through Abbey, which in dry conditions will be taken pretty much flat out. There is Russ Ollivant, who has got the number 89 car of Philip Nagel right behind him. That will be for position as well. That will be for 8th and 9th in the race overall. Russ Ollivant in the blue car with the green rollover hoop and wheel arches to it. The grey and white and light blue number 89 car of Philip Nagel that sits behind. And for the 1600cc class, we also need to keep an eye on what's going on in there, because it looks as though Ben Winrow now has clambered his way up through the order. Big wiggle there through Abbey, and place gained by David Yates at the wheel of the number 15 car as he looks to try and crack on. He was the 1600cc leader and has now managed to get, I think, at least one 420R between himself and the next batch of cars, which are in the 1600cc category, and includes one car that's going rather well there. That is, by the look of things, Ben Winrow. Off the track goes Gary Smith. That's the reigning 1600cc champion, who started following his retirement earlier on, all the way down in 26th position, has claimed a win this season, and that was the opening round of the championship at Donington Park in April, but it hasn't stood back on the top step of the podium subsequently. Now, he was running in 20th position, but that skittish moment is, I think, now going to drop him down through the order. Is it? Well, he's now in 9th place, so... Sorry, not 20th position, his car is number 20. He was in 12th place, but he's gained another 3 places on that lap, even despite making a mistake. 2.5 minutes to go. Now, they're lapping last time through, 2 minutes 50. So, is Harry Senior going to be on his penultimate lap of the race, I think, this time through? Justin Armstrong in third position is trying to close in onto the light green car of Tom Heyman-Joyce. So he'll pick up a bit of a toe as they head down the straight. That will affect his visibility, but again, he can see where the spray is coming from. He jinks out from behind to get a better view heading in towards Stowe, but I'm afraid we've lost another one, and this time it is Jamie Winrow that is off, and his car has spun and he's out of the car and out of the race, I'm afraid. Can't quite tell where that one is from there, but it looks as though it might be heading at the end of the wing, potentially. Is it? No, it's not. It is on the approach to Copse Corner, where he's had the off. Under braking, you can see the polystyrene countdown marker in the background that's been clattered into. He's had the off and probably lightly brushed the barriers, one would have thought. So a minute and a half to go. Paul Begley, we just saw briefly there, working his way around the circuit. He is down in 18th position at the moment, the number 22 car. But for second position, it looks as though Justin Armstrong is trying to unlock the door on Tom Heyman-Joyce. For the moment, it's still the light green car that hangs on to it, but Justin Armstrong gets a good run coming out of Abbey and up towards Farm and in towards the braking area for Village. The outside at Village would give him the inside for the loop, but is he going to go through? He eases himself alongside. He gets his nose ahead going into the corner. Tom Heyman-Joyce braves it out around the outside, but watch in the mirrors, the light blue car that sits right behind them is Jonathan Mitchell, and Jonathan Mitchell is a 3-times race winner so far this season. Big wiggle from Tom Heyman-Joyce as Justin Armstrong goes through, and that wiggle was because he got the wheels on the curb, and he drops from second down to third, and from third down to fourth as Jonathan Mitchell also takes the opportunity to work his way through in the light blue car up into the podium spots. So it's Justin Armstrong from Jonathan Mitchell from Tom Heyman-Joyce. 25 seconds to go, which means in theory we should be on for a further lap, but with lots of other racing to get through, sometimes the checkered flag does just go out early. for Harry Senior, he'd be quite happy to see the checkered flag, and I think it is coming out early. Doesn't surprise me, the checkered flag does fly with a few seconds to go. Harry Senior wins the race here at Silverstone, with Justin Armstrong coming through in second place and Jonathan Mitchell in third. Tom Heyman-Joyce is there in fourth, with race one winner Anthony Barnes finishing in fifth place, and Ross Ollivant will complete the top six from Mark Farmer, who's there in seventh in the end. Good drive from Gary Smith, who started in 26th position. We didn't get that many racing laps in because a few of them behind safety car, but he still clambered up into 8th place. Mark Stanfield there in 9th place. Lewis Tootle will complete the top 10 by the look of things. And who's going to win the 1600cc category? Well, last time we picked up on it, it was the number 15 car of David Yates that was leading that one. And is he still going to be ahead of this next charge of cars, which is going to come over the start-finish line? David Yates is going to claim 16th position overall, and on the road scoop up the win in the 310R or 1600cc category, only just from Ben Winrow, who finished 17th overall, was second of the 1600cc cars home, and third of the 1600cc cars home was number 58, which was Rob Warner. So he'll be more than pleased that he can head up onto the podium. Rob Warner, what I think is his first podium of the season, but for Harry Senior, he will be very, very pleased with that result, Harry. So a win for him is exactly the way that he would want to have finished the weekend. He'd only had one podium prior to this one, and that was when he finished in third position a couple of rounds ago. But to claim a win, it's another name that we can add to the tally for this season. I think everybody now is through to take the checkered flag. There might be maybe one more car to come through, possibly. No, I think that's it, because Ben Winrow, we know, stopped out on... Jamie Winrow stopped out on circuit. Ben is his brother. And Paul Setai, I think, is still to take the checkered flag according to the screen I see, but his car is... or it was stricken out on circuit. He was pushed back into the race, so he may well just trickle his way through very, very shortly. So it wasn't quite the race we wanted for round 13 of the championship, but all of the drivers, I've got to say, you know, hats off to them for dealing with what were pretty horrible conditions out there. The win, however, goes the way of Harry Senior, and we should be able to confirm the results. Harry Senior claims the win from Justin Armstrong in second place, and Jonathan Mitchell's there in third. Tom Heyman-Joyce was fourth, ahead of Anthony Barnes in fifth place, and Ross Ollivant completes the top six. Mark Farmer, Gary Smith, Mark Stansfield and Lewis Tootle were there completing the top 10, and then it was Ian Cowley who was there in 11th place. 12th place goes the way of Cameron Cooper, with Gary Tootle, who was the pole sitter, coming home in 13th in the end, ahead of Mark Drain, Paul Begley, and in 16th position, that is the winner of the 310R section of the race, the number 15 car in the hands of David Yates. From second of the 1600cc cars, Ben Winrow, and third of those that was home was going to be the number 58 car, who finished just inside the top 20, Rob Warner. He will complete the 310R podium. Stephen Riley was just outside of the top 20. David Baldwin, the number 41 car, who we saw claim a win earlier on, finished 23rd in the end, and Don Henschel, one of those drivers I picked out to try and work his way through the order, finished 30th. He just didn't get the opportunity, largely because of the weather conditions and, of course, the fact that we had those safety car periods. And there you can see the cars that finished from 31st all the way down into 40th position, and they still keep going from there as well, because Philip Nagel finished in 41st in the end, and anybody thereafter was either a retiree or had problems late on in the race. And of course, two cars, Andy Perry and JJ Magelheis, not completing even the first lap. So that's it from Silverstone. Thanks for joining us for the Spectrum Medical Toyo Tyres 7 Race Series round 13. We're scheduled to get the next round of the championship underway at Alton Park on the 12th of August. So thanks for joining us at Silverstone. Hopefully we'll see you later on this season. Until next time, from myself, Mark Werrell, goodbye.